Okay, it is 8 p.m. on the dot, and it looks like I am live. All right, friends, tonight we are working on the cute little mitten. So this is felt ornament number 8, and today I'm also going to show you how to make a super fast and easy block so that you could turn these into a table runner in less than 4 hours. And so let me show you what we're doing tonight, okay? So just so that you know what we're working on, today's December 11th, and we're working on the little mitten. And as you can see here, I've already started my little mitten. And this little mitten is a combination of fabric and felt, and it is sewn by machine onto my felt. So what I did is I traced it. And when you trace it, you get a mirror image, right? And so if you want both of them, you're going to have to trace on the front side of your paper and on the back. And I just simply took a glue stick, I put a little bit of glue to hold it in place, and I pinned it, and I stitched around with my sewing machine using a straight stitch. So that's it. I added the little blanket stitch around the edge just because I wanted to make it look rustic, but you certainly do not have to do that. I could have simply just run a straight stitch around, and this is fabric, and then this is felt. And I have appliqued this onto a piece of acrylic felt. Okay, so when I said you could turn this into a table runner in a matter of 4 hours, I'm serious. I have a quick and easy block that I'm going to share with you today that you could use 6 of these little ornaments with and turn them into a table runner. And you could actually give it to somebody in time for the holidays. So let me go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I did, I went over what I did with this, but I'm going to show you what you can do with all of these really. So you're going to start with a 6.5-inch square, and then you're going to grab, if you have any leftover scraps, which this is called the Jelly Roll Club because I literally cut every single scrap that I have left over from all my projects into only 3 sizes. It's either a 10-inch square, a 5-inch square, or a 2.5-inch strip. And that's what I cut everything into. All right, if you are new to the Jelly Roll Club, say hello to everybody in the chat, tell them where you're from, and let us know what you're doing with these little guys. These little ornaments can be sewn by hand or they can be sewn by machine. And let me just show you why I love working with felt. Felt is amazing. So during the pandemic, we were not able to go places and shop. And so I started making felt food for my granddaughter, who was 3 at the time, and she had a little play kitchen. But a lot of the places were sold out of items, so I started making little play food for my grandbaby. So I started playing around and making slices of cheese, little carrot chips, and all kinds of little felty things. You can even make slices of bread. If you want to make some of these, I have some hand-sketched patterns I made, and I would be happy to share with you guys. But I made a bunch of little felt food for my granddaughter and my grandson. They love playing with these. So this is what you can do with felt. You can make sandwiches, you can make watermelon slices, orange slices, all kinds of stuff, okay? So when I said you could make a block in just a matter of minutes, this is what I'm talking about. You're going to start with a 6.5-inch square because that is the perfect size to fit these little guys inside of. All of these finish either 5 by 5 or 5 by 6. Let me measure this guy. This one is 5 inches. So this one finishes 5 inches, and so it'll fit in a 6.5-inch square. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take one piece, and you're going to slice one piece 6.5 inches, and you're going to sew it on the right-hand side of your block. And then you're going to have another piece that you're going to sew across the top of your block, and this one is going to be 8.5 inches. So you're going to start on the short side, and then you're going to sew an 8.5-inch piece. Then you're going to add another 8.5-inch piece to the side, and then across the bottom, you're going to add a 10.5-inch piece. And so then you'll end up with a block that looks like this. So 6.5 inch center, 6.5 inch on the right. You're going to sew 8.5 inch across the top, 8.5 inch across the side, and 10.5 inch across the bottom, and you end up with a little 10.5 inch block. And if you make 6 of these, you can put them across the table as a table runner and connect them with 2.5 inch strips. And it'll give you, if you just make the 6 blocks, because they're 10.5 inches, it'll give you a 60 inch runner. And so let me show you really quick just how fast this is. So whenever I make a border or a binding, I do the same thing. This is my favorite ruler in the whole wide world. It's just a 6.5 inch square ruler. So it doesn't require a lot of thinking. I use a 6.5 inch ruler, 8.5 inch, and a 10.5 inch ruler because those are all of the measurements that you get whenever you combine jelly roll strips. And so I can almost do tons of quilting without ever having to do any math. Simply take it like that, pretty side to pretty side. This fabric has been pressed and lightly starched. I'm going to sew with the big block on the bottom and this on top so that I don't get any waves in this strip. So let me sew that really fast. Won't take me but a second. I need somebody to time me. See how quickly I can get this block done, right? So the time is 8:07. Let's see how fast I can go. All right. So just like that, I stitched that on one side of my block. I'm going to set my seam. And I'm going to sew, let me see. This will press to the inside always. So I just take and I finger press along that edge like this. Then I bring it to the front and I push my iron carefully into that seam, not to distort it, and then run it down the side just like this. The next piece is going to go across the top of this block. So I'm just going to grab this black one. And this should be a little bit bigger than 8.5 because I always cut them like 8 3/4, and I do that to make sure that I have a little bit of wiggle room. And so I'm just going to lay that down, and I'm going to sew this with this strip to the top instead of to the bottom. And then I'm going to make sure that I'm watching which direction this seam goes so that it doesn't get flipped over. All right. And when I tell you this is one of the fastest quilt blocks you can make, this is literally one of the fastest quilt blocks you can make. You can make an entire quilt out of this if you really wanted to. I'm going to resize all of these designs. I'm going to make them bigger so that they fit on a 12.5 inch block. So if you want the supersized version of these, just give me a couple of days, because I have to go into the computer and resize everything to make sure that they don't turn out fuzzy. So I started at 8:07. All right, let's see how quickly I can get this block done. So I trim the 2 edges and I'm ready to press. Same thing as before. Just give it a little press to set that seam. I flip that over so that that seam is now going this direction towards the dark, because I don't want that black to halo through there. And I'm going to just kind of run my finger across that seam to flatten it out just a hair, and then I'm going to run my iron parallel to that seam. I don't press in this direction perpendicular to my seam. I always do parallel because that distorts it less, especially if you're working with long strips. Why would I starch my piece? I sprayed a little bit of starch on this piece, and if you notice how it's stiff, so that when I get ready to applique this down with a straight stitch, it doesn't stretch, because your felt can stretch. So that's a great question. All right, so there I have it. I have 2 sides done. Now I'm going to take, and I started on this side, the right, I went across the top. Now I'm taking the opposite side, 8.5 inches. So this is 6.5, 8.5, and 8.5. Same thing. I'm going to lay this on that edge. And I just tickle it with my fingers until it falls into place. And I'm going to sew this with the strip to the top to prevent it from warping. And when I say this is literally speed sewing, this is what I'm talking about. This is one of the fastest quilt blocks you can make. And it kind of looks like a little bit of a log cabin, but it's not really a log cabin. I just call it a 10-inch roundabout. And I just literally go around and around. And I lay this down here and I check that this corner right there is nice and straight and that I have all of those things lined up. I give it a trim as I go. And if you're consistent with your cutting of the center block, this is so accurate. You end up with all of these blocks that are the same, and especially if you keep your 1/4 inch seam accurate. I use a sewing machine that has a 1/4 inch seam foot, and that way it keeps it consistent. And like again, I take my finger and I run it down the seam like this, and it lays right down. And then I run my iron like this, and I do not distort my blocks this way. The next piece I need is a 10.5 inch piece. So I have a 6.5, an 8.5, an 8.5, and I need to run a 10.5 inch. And I just simply put a seam on that because all of these pieces were all 8.5 inches. And so I'm just going to put that on there. I'm going to leave a little bit of room. I'm going to try to line up this seam with this seam right there so that they nest. And so when I press, I won't have any weird bumps. I'm actually just going to take and I'm going to slice off a little, and then I'll come back and trim it. And again, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam with my long strip to the top. Are you guys still timing me? How quickly am I doing this? All right. One more time, I'm going to trim this before I open it, and I use the top of the edge to make sure that it is making a nice 90-degree angle. I trim that. I flip it over. I'm making a nice 90-degree angle on this side and making sure that all of my excess has been trimmed off. I'm kind of lining it up to make sure that it's lined up across here and across here. I'm sliding it over and giving it a little tip. All right. Now I'm going to press this block and see how accurate I was making a 10.5 inch block. All right. If you notice what I did with that seam, it lines up right here, and because it's nested, it's not going to cause any bumps right there. I'm not going to get any weird humps. Even though I pieced that strip, I lined it up with that spot right there so that it doesn't create a raised bump, and those are nice and flat. Okay. Let's use this mat to measure, and let's see. And it looks like it is, look, it is dead on 10.5 inches. Let me straighten it out. And that's a 10.5 inch line, and it's pretty darn close. If your block is off, like mine is like a minutia where it's off, I could actually take and spritz it with a tiny bit of water and press it out to make sure that these seams are perfectly flat. And there you have it, friends. That's the fastest block that you're gonna get. So you can make these blocks in about 10 minutes, right? And then it's gonna take you a few minutes to add this. This was literally, if you do not do any of the handwork, I traced this and it took me probably another 5 minutes to make this. That means in 15 minutes I could make 4 blocks. And so in 15 minutes I could make 1 full block. And so in 1 hour I could make 4 blocks. And so in 2 hours I could make the entire table runner if I was working really quickly and I didn't take any bathroom breaks. Which you do need to take bathroom breaks. Okay, so then I made this little mitten, and I can either put him like this in the center of my block, or I can turn him actually at an angle. And either way, he's going to fit very nicely in a 6.5 inch block. You could also turn these into mug rugs, because this is a cute little mug rug, so if you wanted to give this to somebody. And so I made one earlier, and look what you can do. So this is the short side at the top. I'm going to put the short side on the side, and then next thing you know, you can join these like this. So the short side on the top, short side on the bottom, and you can join these together to make one long table runner. Do you see how they work? And you would just do all the way across. Could I use a tailor's clapper to help set my seams? I don't really use one. I don't feel like I need one. I think that it helps that I use a wooden board. So because I use a wooden ironing board, I think that helps. So this is solid wood. My granddaughter wrote all over it because she says it's hers. She's going to inherit this one day. So I use a wooden ironing board, and I think that helps. I think the other thing that helps also is using a wool pressing mat. So a wool pressing mat allows your seams to kind of sink in. And let's see if these are the same size. I haven't even trimmed these yet. Yeah, it looks like these are the same size. And one of the things that you can do is just press your seams flat like this. And I find that I don't need a tailor's clapper at all. And I try not to tug or push, but just allow the iron to kind of glide over the surface. And that gives me some very, very flat blocks. If you notice that seam is super flat, I always press to the side and never open unless it's absolutely necessary for the construction of the block. And the reason I do that is because I want these seams to be very, very strong, okay? So look at that. In just a few minutes, you can build yourself a block. You can make 4 of these and turn them into a wall hanging. You can line them up so these line up, or you can put it to where none of them line up like this. So where you just have a long one and then the short ones are like this. That way you don't have any seams to match. So you play around with these however you want. And then this literally gets pinned into place like this once the block is done. And I'm going to sew around it with my sewing machine, just using a regular straight stitch, and I'll show you how pretty they end up. Just pin it in the middle. Make sure I have equal distance from either side, and that looks good. I put pins going vertical and pins going horizontal because I'm going to be spinning this around, and so I don't want it to shift. And now I'm going to take my machine and I'm going to straight stitch all the way around the little glove. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like. It won't take me but a second. And you can use thread that matches, or you can use thread that's contrasting. Either one works just fine. Almost done. I'm just coming around the bend here. All right. And guess what? When you pull out the pins, you can barely even see the stitching all the way around, because when you have felt and you're stitching onto fabric, it literally sinks in so that you can't even see it. And so it has that three-dimensional quality. So this would make a lovely, lovely table runner. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys like this as another way of using these little blocks? And just as a recap really quick, like I said, this is literally a 10-minute block. You can make the blocks themselves in 10 minutes. So let me just kind of recap to show you what I did. I took my little mitten and I traced him onto felt, and I cut him out of tan felt. Then I traced on a little bit of fusible interfacing. I did the little mitten and I put him down. I also did another one. This one was done without interfacing because that one was too thick. And this is literally just fabric that I starched and I glued down with the glue stick, and then I stitched. And then I put the little mitten, and there I have it. So now I made a cute little quilt block, and it is perfect for a little mug rug. I could give that to somebody as a gift. And it has that kind of three-dimensional quality. It makes a perfect little wall hanging. So, alrighty friends, this is another use for these little gingerbread mittens. I still have to put a heart on this one. This is my cookie from last night, if you guys want to see it. I did this by hand. I don't know, I'm loving all of these. I might even attach my cookie to this other block I made. I'm not sure. And then I'd have a cookie and a mitten. And this would make a perfect placemat actually, because these are 10.5-inch blocks. I could put two of these together, and these could actually be a placemat if I really wanted to. So, all right, friends, if you don't have any questions, do you have any suggestions on how we should use these blocks? Leave those in the comments. If you guys want to make little felty food, I could share my little hand-sketched patterns with you guys for little felty food. My favorite are the tomatoes. And the tomatoes literally have batik fabric inside. Do you see that? It's batik fabric. This is craft paint for the seeds. And I did 2 layers of tomatoes and just stitched them around and made those little tomatoes. So if you want to learn how to make these little guys, I'll be glad to help you. Super easy. I just drew them myself and made them out of felt. All right, friends, it's been wonderful having you here tonight. I can show you how to turn this. Somebody said, can you show us how to make magnets? Sure, I can show you how to turn some of these into little magnetic things. I'm also going to change the size of all of these images. I'm going to make them half size so that you can make them little, and I'm going to make them jumbo sized so that you can make them bigger. So if you want these pieces in mini or if you want them in jumbo, you let me know and I will make them bigger for you so that you can use them for other projects, and I will also shrink them so you can use them in other projects. All right, friends. It's been wonderful. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to share this channel with your friends. Peruse around on the channel, watch the other videos, give it a thumbs up, and I appreciate you guys joining me for another video lesson with the Jelly Roll Club. All right, everybody, have a great night. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye. You guys want mini? I see a lot of you guys want mini. Okay, friends, I will shrink them all down for you. All right, bye, everybody. Have a great night. Have a great work week, too.